Welcome to the diner where we serve up culture from a short order kitchen. Step up to the counter and let us serve you a slice of mental pie. Not a feast, just a snack, a deep thought to chew on from a big, meaty book. It'll go good with a cup of coffee, and then you can get back to the fray with a few beautiful new thoughts to think. It's season 2, and the Blue Plate special is still Timothy Petitsa's The Ethics of Beauty, that daunting doorstopper of popular theology that turns out to be amazingly accessible and powerfully relevant. This time we're talking about his essay on sex and gender, Only Priests Can Marry, the reconciliation of men and women in Christ. Roll up to the counter and have a couple bites of it with us.
Welcome back to the diner. We left our last episode on the note of toxic shame, and we were talking about unknowing. Today we want to talk a little bit about what healthy shame is and what it looks like as opposed to toxic shame. And in The Ethics of Beauty, Dr. Petitsa says this. He says, the ultimate goal of the church's soul healing is that the soul should become orthodox. And he has a little o, orthodox there. And on this decisive point, the beauty-first way diverges irreconcilably from both the secular truth-first mode of psychoanalysis and the rationalism of philosophical ethics. For the Church, the healthy human soul is characterized by 3 concentric states of healthy shame, which we can term shyness, boldness, and glory. The soul possessing such healthy shames will naturally and joyfully express eros for God and agape towards God's icon, the human being. Fulfilling these 2 loves, the soul becomes true and is saved. So that probably sounds foreign to most of us because we don't really know how to talk about shame, about what healthy shame is. And in this particular chapter, Petitsa is talking about soul therapy. He's taking what we normally consider psychotherapy, especially in America, and he's pointing out where it falls short and why it can't heal us at the deepest level. He's not saying that psychotherapy is all wrong in every case and that it can never be useful, but what he's saying is it doesn't have the same purpose of healing. Like it can't heal us on the same level as the church can.
Right. Because the actual healthy experience of shame is at its very basis about learning how to relate to God correctly.
Yes.
So shyness and boldness, he elsewhere in this chapter, he refers to them actually as both masculine and feminine ways of approaching God. But he uses this in the context of his priest, prophet, king matrix, meaning that shyness is not just appropriate to men and women, and boldness is not just appropriate to men. We are each meant to start with one, move into the other, symbolize the one and the other, and both ultimately end up in that 3rd step of glory.
Mm-hmm.
So later in the chapter, he defines that 1st step of shyness. He also defines it as chaste yet ardent eros, and the question of unknowing that we've talked about earlier. He uses this quote. This is the hard saying about chaste and ardent eros, shyness, the 1st step of shame. He says, I don't know anything so that I may know somewhat. Shyness means, in this case, stepping back from our natural position of egoism and saying that more than being right about anything, we want to know Jesus. This is almost precisely what Dostoevsky was saying, and I forget where the quote is from. Somewhere in his writings, Dostoevsky basically says that you could prove to him that all of Christianity is false, and he would still love and follow Christ.
Right. Yes, I've heard that before. Mm-hmm.
So that's what unknowing looks like when it's oriented correctly towards God is, Lord, I don't want to die on any hill about being right or wrong about any of this. I just want to do what I need to do in order to get to know you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to go back to the beginning there, the masculine aspect of this is boldness or long-suffering agape. And the hard saying for this is, all these will be saved, only I shall be lost. Long-suffering agape is the willingness to travel with Christ down to the bottom of the inverted pyramid. I think we talked about this in our book. I don't know if we've talked about it anywhere on the podcast, but Saint Silouan is it Saint Silouan or Saint Sophrony?
It is Saint Silouan.
That Christ takes the hierarchical structure of power and authority in the universe, this pyramid where we think of the most powerful person on the top and the peons on the bottom, and Christ inverts it. And he becomes the most powerful being in the universe, holding everyone up and bearing all the weight of suffering for everyone else. He becomes willing to be the only one lost so that all shall be saved.
Yes.
And this isn't taking a diversion into universalism at all. This is just the posture that Christ takes towards humanity. And this is what long-suffering love looks like. This is what Petitsis identifies as the masculine path, the kingly path. So first we have the prophetic path, the unknowing path, the willingness to be in relationship rather than be right. And then we have this masculine path, this willing to suffer for salvation.
Mm-hmm. Both of them are constituted by a willingness to let go of control, to let go of what you know, to let go of your very life if you need to. It's a releasing of what you hold most dear, I think.
Yeah, it's a releasing of every single idol that you can possibly imagine, right?
Yeah.
As we go on this spiritual path, we're constantly identifying things that we're placing in importance way above where they should really be ranked in the grand scheme of things. So as we're moving through this path of chaste and ardent eros and long-suffering agape, here we've got eros and agape, and they bring us together. They work together to bring us to this third state of shame, of glory, which admittedly this is all theoretical for me.
And me too.
Okay,
Yep.
Petite, I'll take your word for it. Glory's we'll say that the saints got this, right?
Right.
But he calls glory this coincidence unto our last limit of the first two kinds of shame.
Mm-hmm.
So even though they're pulling us in different directions, he says that when they act together, they take us to this marvelous place, this marvelous spiritual posture that's actually beyond our ability to imagine for ourselves.
Yeah, and he outlines the progression too, where he talks about we have this chaste and ardent eros. Yeah, so he said we have shyness, boldness, and glory. And so we have this eros for God, and that leads to agape toward others. That's where the boldness comes in, being willing to be lost, to die for the other. And then that makes us more true. So you've got the three loves. You've got eros, agape, and then finally you end with philia, becoming a friend of Christ. And that's the glory. You partake in his glory because you are his true friend.
Right. We've been raised up to the level of no longer slaves or servants, but friends.
Right.
Which is really mind-blowing.
It is. It really is. Yes.
We take it for granted because we've heard it all our lives, but it really is. It's really subversive. It's really destabilizing to think you could be God's friend.
Yeah. Well, and this is a little bit tangential, but I heard it was Father Thomas Hopko. I was listening to one of his talks, and he was saying that it says in Scripture that we are adopted as sons of God, right? And he made particular mention of the fact that it doesn't say sons and daughters, but it says sons only, because in the ancient world it was the firstborn son who received the entire inheritance. And so as men and women both, we are all sons of God in that sense, that he is passing on to us his inheritance.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a gender thing where, the men get it and the women don't. It's that men and women both are put in that place of the heir, of inheriting the riches that the Father has to pass on.
Yeah, I think it's also important to point out here, too, one of the really great warnings Petitsits gives in talking about this shame is the warning against false shame. Like, it would be really easy to take what we've been talking about and oversimplify it here.
Uh-huh.
And he says that false shame before God will make a person pious in false ways by becoming a shame that is subverted into legalism, guilt, fear, and a paradoxical obsession with the self as worthless.
Yes. That ties back to what we were talking about, toxic shame.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So in talking about healthy shame, like really in our culture, and I think part of this is just historical. After the violence of the 20th century, I think, and even before that, we have a historical memory, all of us, of profound violence. And on some level, because we're all interconnected, we all have to do some kind of work where we're processing this connection to trauma. And trauma work can get a bad rap among some people because it can be accused of being the wrong kind of introversion. I think we talked about that earlier too, right?
Yeah.
The navel-gazing version of introversion. But it is really true that we need to understand our wounds so that we're not referring to our wounds as our true self.
He says something, and I don't have the page marked to quote it exactly, but Petitsits says something in one of the earlier chapters about how trauma has a tendency to skew our perception of reality, so that it's like, I think of it as like looking through a kaleidoscope, and you twist it a little bit and the whole picture changes, and you're looking through the same lens, you're looking through the same kaleidoscope, but everything has shifted because of that one little twist that you made.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we become twisted or broken somehow through trauma, we're no longer able to see clearly.
Mm-hmm.
And so then we take that knowledge that we think we have, because we're still looking and we're still perceiving something, but it's not reality that's in line with, how could you say it?
It's not the fullness of reality.
It's not the
a piece
fullness
of reality.
Yeah. So you have a distorted view of the picture rather than being able to see the whole for what it really is.
Before we leave here, I think probably the most practical advice I was ever given about dealing with this kind of trauma is that when you're stuck in a traumatic viewpoint and all you can see is the brokenness, the faith you need to have is not very big. You don't have to have faith that God's going to make it all right. You don't have to have faith in the big picture. What you have to have faith in is that your perspective can change. And this is very true, because when you're stuck in a traumatic mode of seeing, you can no longer even see things like the beautiful miracle of a sunrise, for example. It's not compatible. You cannot see these things. And we know that eventually that trauma viewpoint will loosen its grip enough that you can see other things. So the act of faith that you have to have when you're stuck in a traumatic way of viewing things is very small. You just have to believe that that the kaleidoscope, to use your analogy, you just have to believe that the kaleidoscope can shift again.
Yeah. It's not going to stay this way forever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's end here.
Okay, a couple things to meditate on this week is just on our own experiences of shyness and boldness. So ask yourselves, how have you experienced the right kind of shame, especially in the context of your relationship with God? And shyness and boldness can be the easiest way to enter into this kind of meditation.
Thanks for joining us at the Diner. If this season resonates with you, you may be interested to know that over the summer, I released the sex ed curriculum I created for my own teenagers. Sex Ed for Sane People is a high school level discourse on human sexuality that, among many things, is informed by the understanding explained here in Ethics of Beauty. It's interactive, meant to be customized by you for your students, and it's available for download on my website, lauraewolf.com.